Hello everybody, welcome to Haiku Talk. I'm your host, Ben Ga, your friendly neighborhood haiku poet, and today we're going to be taking a look at a piece from the latest issue of Acorn from John O'Connor of Chicago. There was an old famous New Zealand haiku poet by the same name. I don't want to get people confused. This is John O'Connor from Chicago. And the first line of this piece is called Round Midnight. It's a fun one. And with that, you know what time it is. Time to grab yourself a tasty beverage. Let's sit back, relax, and haiku. Okay, welcome back everybody. It's good to be with you again for another episode of Haiku Talk. On this episode, we have a really nice piece by John O'Connor that deals with referencing another art form within a haiku. And he does it in a beautiful and excellent way. And before we get to what he's referencing, let's take a look at the poem, talk about its structure, and then we'll go from there. So the poem goes like this. Round midnight, miles before I sleep. Round midnight, miles before I sleep. Really good piece. And this poem follows the fragment and phrase, with the first line being the fragment of round midnight, and the phrase being miles before I sleep. And yes, miles does have a capital M in it. We'll get to that in just a moment. The poem here kind of sets the scene, and I want to touch that up front, and then we'll get into the line-by-line breakdown. Because if you don't know the poem, or the other piece of art that this is referencing, the piece sets up a very nice scene, which for me is that it's about midnight and you have miles to go basically before you can sleep. And for me, I'm putting on a highway, I'm putting on a road, and I'm driving and I got a way to go yet before I can pull over, find a hotel, and go to sleep. And that's a great reading, perfectly works. It bypasses the capital M in miles, but it's a nice scene. Now, if you happen to know what this is referencing, which is this, a piece by a recording by Miles Davis, hence the M for Miles, from his album Round About Midnight, with the title track, or the first track being Round Midnight, this poem takes on a whole different meaning for you. If you don't know that track, which I believe was actually written by Thelonious Monk and a few others, but the Miles Davis version of it from Round About Midnight is one you should definitely check out. And, find it on, Google it and find a way to listen to it, because it's a really great track. And it will put you in a very different headspace when you're reading this poem and thinking about listening to that track before you go to bed. It's a really great tune, and I won't go into all the jazzy details about this, but it is a jazz piece, and I think it's one that anybody could put that on and really appreciate it. But what John does here is constructs the poem in such a way that if you don't know the Miles Davis reference, you still have a poem to hang around. You still have a moment that's being captured here, and that's, in my mind, the best way to reference another work, or to layer a reference of works within a poem that you're working with. If you don't do that, you're going to put up a barrier to the reader, and you're going to have to start footnoting your poems. And that can work in other types of poetry. I know Ezra Pound and T.S. Eliot were famous for it back in their day, but it's in a haiku, you really don't want to have to footnote your poems. So you really, if you want to reference another piece of art, be it a piece of music or a painting or something else, you're going to want to try to do it just like John does here, and do it in a way so that if you don't know what the reference is, you still have a poem to work with. And let's take a look at how he does that. So line 1, we have the line, round midnight, round midnight. Now that, since we don't know what's coming after that, it puts us in a specific place, a specific time, and it allows us to engage our imagination to figure out where we are in the world in this moment around midnight. And again, I want to emphasize that when you're reading a haiku, try not to think about what the poet is doing. Try not to think about the poet at all, and put yourself into the moment. So when you read round midnight, what goes on in your head when you think of round midnight? Where do you go? Where are you put in a location, And for me, initially, I'm thinking about being at my place here around midnight. It's up late. For me, if I'm staying up that late, it's probably on a weekend. But that's all I have right now to go on, and it's a specific spot. And then we go to line 2, which is just the word miles. Miles. Capital M, which for me, I think of Miles Davis right away, because I'm a Miles Davis guy. And tried to write some of my own Miles Davis pieces, unsuccessfully as of yet, so I have high admiration for this one. But if you don't think of Miles Davis, you have round midnight, and then you think of miles. Okay, and to me, as I said before, now I'm put on a highway thinking about I'm driving, logging those miles. And that's the only place that I'm going to be in a car around midnight trying to drive. I'm not going to be out running around midnight. I'm not going to be riding my bike around midnight. I'm not going to be doing anything that's going to take in mileage. So that's a really nice frame of reference. Now, what you don't know is that round midnight is a song title. And John specifically did not put this in quotes, did not capitalize round and the R in round and the M in midnight. For me, when I look at that, that's a creative decision that says, hey, if the person doesn't know what this is, they're still going to go someplace. And that's a really nice way of handling this. He did capitalize M in miles, and then we get to the third line, which is before I sleep. Before I sleep. And that, completes a moment of either listening to Miles Davis or for me driving on the highway, pushing through the miles ahead before I find a place to sleep for the night. And that is very successful to me. I like both of those poems, or both of those moments. I like being in the car on a road trip, driving a few more miles before I pull off this road to sleep. And I also like the idea of putting on this record and listening to round midnight before I go to sleep. Like I said, you Google that song, pull it up and listen to it somehow, however you listen to your music. And this poem will put a whole different groove on it for you. But this is very well done, and I think is a good example of how to reference other works within a poem without having to footnote, and keeping the poem readable to somebody that doesn't get the reference. Again, I think that's extremely important. I don't have many hard rules that I have when it comes to my own writing, but that's one I picked up a long time ago when I was in college getting my creative writing degree, digesting a lot of the modernist poets from back in the day. And, when you have, like if you read, The Wasteland by T.S. Eliot or Cantos by Ezra Pound, where, at least in my text, my Norton anthologies, like half the page was verse and half the page was footnotes. And it's maddening. I get why they do that or why they did it, but you don't want to do that with your haiku. And so you got to find a way to make the poems work for someone that doesn't know the reference. And the reference then would only add an extra layer or add a different take, a turn on the poem. And again, John O'Connor does a wonderful job here for this. And, you know, it's a great piece, a really great piece. So thank you all for tuning in for another episode. I hope you have been having a good week since we've last met. And we're spiraling towards we're in the heart of fall. We're spiraling towards the slowdown towards the end of the year. So I hope all is well. And till next time, cheers. Hey everybody. As I was putting together this video, I realized that first line of Round Midnight is kind of strange if you don't read the word round as a shortened version of around. And in the actual song title, there is an apostrophe before round to let you know that round is a short for around. And maybe I already knew that, or I just, in the context of Round Midnight, I just assumed that it is around midnight is what was being said. But that's not how it's actually printed in the journal. And I don't know if that little apostrophe before round was meant to be there and just wasn't listed or what. But I did just want to call attention to that because that is a sense of colloquialism, that if you are living in a country that speaks English but doesn't use that shortened version of around to be around, like just round midnight, that first line might cause some problems for you because you're trying to think of round midnight. What is like round a circular midnight? Maybe it would reference, you might think of the moon, you might have other things where it might take you, I don't know. But I did just want to call that attention to that towards the end here, just to give you a little extra note, because that really stood out to me when I was editing this video. And before anybody comments on that, I don't really know what to say about that per se. I think that if this were my poem, I probably would have put the apostrophe there. I think it would still allow you to understand the poem without the song reference. And it further also then ties it to the song reference because the apostrophe R is in the actual song title. As you can see. Hopefully it's not quite coming into focus, but Round Midnight. Anyway, that's it. Just wanted to add that tidbit. Again, thank you all for tuning in. Like, subscribe, ring the bell, and all the deals we do for Facebook, for YouTube. If you like. If not, that's okay too. Thanks for tuning in. That's the important thing. Until next time.